20 of the most amazing natural phenomena that seem impossible. Welcome. Get comfortable. If you're already in bed, try to find a position where you can completely relax. Let today gradually fade away. All your to-dos, worries, and thoughts can wait a little while. An unusual journey awaits us this night. We're not going to distant galaxies or imaginary worlds. Everything we'll talk about today actually exists. All these places are right here on our planet. And this is perhaps the most surprising thing. Because sometimes the Earth seems much more mysterious than the wildest fantasies of writers. Somewhere in the middle of the ocean, the water begins to glow like thousands of stars. Somewhere in the desert, the sand suddenly begins to sing. There are lakes painted blood red, ice flowers blooming in the middle of the polar night, and clouds that behave like huge ocean waves. Some of these phenomena were long considered legends. Some still seem impossible, even to those who have seen them with their own eyes. But they are all real. Today we will slowly travel from one natural wonder to another. Take your time. No rush. It's as if we were leafing through a huge book of our planet before going to bed. And we will start with one of the most beautiful phenomena on Earth. From the place where the ocean turns into a starry sky at night. Chapter 1. The Glowing Ocean. Imagine a warm, tropical evening. The sun had long since disappeared behind the horizon. The sky turned dark blue, almost black. The first stars appear above the water. The sea seems completely calm. An ordinary beach, ordinary waves. But as soon as one wave touches the shore, something incredible happens. The water glows with a soft blue light. Another wave. And one more. Each one leaves a shimmering trace on the sand. If you walk barefoot along the shore, your steps begin to glow. If you throw a stone into the water, a whole cloud of blue sparks will flare up around it. It looks as if someone scattered millions of little stars across the ocean. At first glance, it looks like magic. But the reason lies in living beings. Very small. So small that they are almost impossible to see without special equipment. These are microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates. During the day, they are completely invisible, common inhabitants of seawater. But at night, a real miracle happens. When a wave moves, when a fish swims nearby, or when a person touches the water, these tiny creatures begin to glow. This is how they react to movement around them. Scientists believe that this glow helps them protect themselves from predators, but for a person, it looks like real magic. One of the most famous places where you can see the glowing ocean is in the Maldives. Sometimes locals call such beaches the Sea of Stars, and this name fits perfectly, because at night it becomes difficult to understand where the sky ends and the water begins. The stars are shining overhead. The stars twinkle beneath our feet. And it seems as if the whole world is filled with soft blue light. A similar phenomenon can be seen in other parts of the planet, in Puerto Rico, in Australia, off the coast of Thailand. Sometimes the glow appears unexpectedly and disappears just as suddenly. Locals say that some nights are especially bright. At such moments, even the traces of boats turn into long, glowing trails. And the dolphins swimming through such water look like fairy tale creatures from ancient legends. Imagine this picture. Silent night, warm wind, calm ocean. And suddenly a school of dolphins appears out of the darkness. Every movement they make leaves a luminous trail behind them. The water around flashes with hundreds of lights. For a few seconds it seems as if the stars themselves decided to descend into the sea. This is probably why people have always loved such phenomena. They remind us that nature is capable of creating beauty that cannot be imagined in advance. Sometimes the most amazing things happen very quietly. No loud noises, no disasters, no danger. Just the ocean, the night, and millions of tiny creatures that turn water into light. And while the waves continue to slowly roll onto the shore, we will move on. Because another amazing place awaits us ahead. There the sky flashes not blue, but with a blinding white light, again and again, thousands of times a night. In the next chapter, we will go to the most unusual natural lighthouse on our planet, to the eternal thunderstorm of Catatumbo. Chapter 2. The Eternal Thunderstorm of Catatumbo. Now let's leave the warm beaches and head to South America, where nature has staged one of the most spectacular light shows on Earth. Imagine the vast expanse of Lake Maracaibo in Venezuela. Night has already come into its own. The wind has almost died down. Fishing boats bob on the water. From the shore, everything looks calm. But then a light flashes on the horizon. One lightning bolt, then another one, then several at once, and soon the whole sky begins to sparkle. Non-stop, hour by hour. The night turns into an endless series of flashes. Sometimes it seems as if a giant searchlight is working somewhere beyond the horizon. Lightning strikes so frequently that darkness barely has time to return between flashes. Local residents have been observing this phenomenon for many generations, and sailors used it as a natural lighthouse several centuries ago. In the age of sail, captains could see flashes hundreds of kilometers from the shore. There was no need for any maps or modern equipment. The sky itself showed the way. That is why this place was often called nature's greatest lighthouse. The surprising thing is that thunderstorms occur here almost every night. Usually a thunderstorm is something temporary. The storm passed, the sun came out, and it was all over. But Catatumbo lives by its own rules. In some years, more than 1 million lightning strikes are recorded here. It's hard to even imagine such a figure. When looking at the sky at times of peak activity, it can seem as if the atmosphere itself is continuously glowing from within. For a long time, people did not understand the reason for this phenomenon. There were legends. They talked about mountain spirits, about ancient curses, about the mysterious energy hidden underground. But the real reason turned out to be no less interesting. It's all about the special location of the area. On one side, there is a huge lake. On the other hand, there are the high Andes Mountains. During the day, the sun heats the water and the moist air above it. At night, this air encounters cold currents that descend from the mountains. A constant struggle between warm and cold air masses begins, and the result is endless thunderstorms. It could be said that the very geography of this place creates the perfect machine for producing lightning. But even today, Catatumbo continues to amaze scientists. In 2010, something unexpected happened. After a severe drought, thunderstorms suddenly disappeared. For several months. People began to say that the legendary phenomenon had ended forever. Newspapers published alarming headlines. Scientists argued about the causes. But then the rains came. And one night, the sky lit up again. First with one lightning bolt, then the second one. And then everything returned to its usual rhythm. It's as if nature just took a little vacation. Imagine a fisherman who goes out to the lake at night. There is darkness all around. The boat slowly rocks on the water. Somewhere, night birds can be heard. And suddenly the sky is illuminated by a bright flash. For a moment the mountains become visible, shore, clouds, then darkness again. And almost immediately a new flash, then another one. And one more thing. At such moments, it seems as if the planet itself is speaking the language of light. This is probably why the Catatumbo thunderstorm fascinates people so much. Because this is one of those places where nature demonstrates its power without destruction or danger. It just shows how amazing our world can be. And while endless lightning continues to flash over the lake, we will move on. Our next stop takes us to where the desert itself begins to make sounds, where huge sand mountains unexpectedly turn into musical instruments. In the next chapter, we will see singing dunes. Chapter 3. Singing Dunes. Let's leave behind the stormy skies of Venezuela and move into a completely different world, into the desert. Imagine, sand to the very horizon, Golden dunes stretch one after another, the wind gradually changing their pattern, sweeping away old tracks, creating new ones. No rivers, no trees, almost no sounds, only silence, that same desert silence. Strange, almost alive. You climb a high dune. The sand is soft under your feet. The sun is already setting, and there is no one around, only endless waves of sand. You take a step down the slope, and suddenly, a sound. Low, long, rumbling, as if a giant instrument has been turned on somewhere deep. The rumble grows, penetrates the sand, and is felt not only by your ears, but by your whole body. For a second, you might actually think the desert is singing. People have noticed this for a long time. Travelers told of the voices of the sands, caravan drivers, of invisible drums among the dunes. Some believed these were spirits underground. Others believed they were a sign, a warning. And honestly, you can understand them. If you don't know what it's all about, it all sounds almost mystical, especially at night, especially when there's not a soul around. And the reason is in the grains of sand themselves. But in some deserts, it has a special size and shape. When millions of these grains of sand slide down a slope at once, they rub against each other and create vibrations. From these tiny movements, one large sound is created. Thus, the dune becomes something like a huge musical instrument. Sometimes it hums like a distant airplane. Sometimes like distant thunder. Sometimes it draws out a deep note, almost like an organ. Each desert has its own voice. In the Gobi, it is especially low and powerful. In the Sahara, it's more like a rumble. And in some places in California, people climb the dunes specifically for this strange concept. Not all the dunes sing. Many factors need to come together. The size of the sand grains, their dryness, the shape of the dune, the air temperature. The slightest change, and the sand falls silent. That's why some dunes resound for centuries, while others suddenly lose their voice. It's easy to imagine an ancient traveler. Several days on the road, surrounded by sand and sky, the sun is already setting, and suddenly this low rumble lingers in the distance. The desert begins to sound. You can believe anything. Even now, when the mechanism of this phenomenon has long been understood, hearing a singing dune for yourself is too alive, too meaningful, too strange for ordinary sand. Perhaps that's why people go there again and again, to hear the music the earth itself makes, without an orchestra, without instruments, without musicians, just wind, sand, and time. And now, on. The next story takes us to a place as if conjured up by an artist with a dark imagination. The water there is red. The white silhouettes of animals lie on the banks, and life stands very close to death. Lake Natron. Chapter 4. Lake Natron, where the water seems enchanted. Now we're in East Africa, in Tanzania. Beneath the scorching sun lies one of the most unusual lakes on the planet, a vast plain. The air shimmers with heat. Volcanoes loom dark in the distance. The soil is covered with light-colored salt crusts, and amid all this, a strangely colored lake. Sometimes pink, sometimes bright red, sometimes almost copper-colored, like molten metal. From above, Lake Natron looks unreal, as if a palette of paints had been spilled onto the ground. But first impressions are anything but certain. This is one of the harshest bodies of water on Earth. In the shallows, the water temperature can reach 60 degrees Celsius. The alkalinity is so high that it's simply unsuitable for many organisms. From the outside, the lake appears dead. But no, it's more complex. Travelers were once particularly struck by photographs from the shores of Lake Natron. Birds and other animals there looked like stone statues. Some seemed covered in white glaze. Some looked like ancient sculptures forgotten in the desert. When these photos spread online, many assumed the lake instantly turned all living things to stone. In fact, it doesn't. The process is far more prosaic and slower. The high concentration of salts gradually dries out the remains of animals, and then a dense mineral crust forms on the surface. This is what creates that eerie impression of stone. It's beautiful, to be honest, and unsettling too, especially at sunset when the red water catches the last rays of the sun and white silhouettes freeze on the shore, like characters from some very old legend. But the most amazing thing is that this is where one of the largest flamingo colonies in the world is located. Paradox? Indeed. Why do they choose such a harsh location? Because most predators can't survive here, which means the chicks have a better chance. Plus, the lake is a perfect home for special microorganisms and algae, the flamingo's main food source. What's nearly fatal for some is the perfect home for others. Every year, millions of birds fly here. Pink clouds rise above the lake. Hundreds of thousands of flamingos take flight simultaneously, and at that moment, the lake seems to come alive. It's early morning. The sun is just rising. The water is almost still, reflecting the pink sky. Thousands of flamingos stand in the shallows. There's almost no wind. Everything looks quiet, calm, even gentle. And it's hard to believe that before you lies one of the most extreme places on the planet. Perhaps that's the power of natron. It reminds us that nature is never simple and straightforward. What appears dead and hostile can actually be a refuge for millions of living creatures. And what seems frightening is part of a very precise balance. And as flocks of flamingos slowly pass over the red water, we move on. Next stop, the Arctic, where, in the midst of icy winter, flowers suddenly bloom. Not petals, not leaves, ice. In the next chapter, Arctic ice flowers. Chapter 5. Ice flowers of the Arctic. Now, far to the north, where there is snow, ice, and a biting wind almost all year round, an endless frozen sea. The horizon almost disappears. The sky and the icy surface merge into one. The sun rises very low, only slightly tinting the snow, pink, gold. The air is so cold that you literally feel every breath with your body, and it seems, what could possibly be alive here, especially not something delicate? But it is there. Ice flowers. At first, you can't even believe they are real, as if someone went out onto the ice at night and carefully arranged thousands of white roses there. Some look like lilies, others like chrysanthemums. Sometimes they even look like small bouquets, assembled by someone's very patient hand. The strangest thing is that they appear in a matter of hours and disappear almost immediately. Sometimes they last only one night. By morning, the wind can wipe them away completely. Sometimes just a slight warming is enough, and that's it. This beauty is gone. So seeing ice flowers is a stroke of luck, even for those who have worked in polar regions for years. Where do they come from? In short, a rather rare set of conditions is needed. The sea must be covered in thin, young ice, and the air above it must become noticeably colder. Then, water vapor rises from the relatively warm surface and almost immediately turns into ice crystals. They grow gradually, layer after layer, petal after petal. That's how ice flowers appear, and each one has its own pattern. Like snowflakes, no two are alike. This is probably why they look almost unrealistic in photographs. You look at them, and it's hard to accept that they're not a plant, but simply water, in a different state. Sometimes these flowers grow several centimeters. For ice crystals, that's a lot. Sometimes entire fields are covered with thousands of these fragile formations. From above, it looks as if a winter garden has suddenly blossomed among the ice, especially at dawn. A polar morning. The wind has almost died down. A light haze hangs over the sea. The first light touches the ice, and thousands of icy petals begin to shimmer. Each one catches it in its own way. Tiny sparks flare up all around. At moments like these, it's hard to believe that this is one of the harshest places on the planet. It all seems too much like a fairy tale. And yes, ice flowers aren't just beautiful. Scientists have been studying them seriously for a long time. It turns out that they can accumulate salts and other substances from seawater. This means they participate in processes that are important for polar regions. In general, there's something very true about nature in this. Even the most fragile, fleeting phenomenon turns out to be part of a larger system. Beauty is next to physics, almost always. But for a person standing in the middle of an ice field, at that moment, formulas are not in the picture. They simply see a miracle. Quiet, fragile, brief. A few hours, and it's gone. As if nothing had happened. And while the Arctic wind gently touches the icy petals, we move on, even higher, to where a strange purple streak of light sometimes appears in the sky, a phenomenon long overlooked even by scientists. Chapter 6. The Steve Phenomenon. A glow that should not exist. We're heading north again, to where the long winter nights are illuminated by one of the most spectacular spectacles on Earth, the Northern Lights. It's easy to imagine the scene: dark sky, snow, silence, and green ribbons of light slowly flow over the horizon. It would seem the Northern Lights have been studied inside and out. They've been observed for hundreds of years. Photographers from all over the world travel to the Arctic for these shots. But nature, as usual, has decided not to stop at the familiar. Imagine a cold night somewhere in Canada. A few astronomy enthusiasts are looking at the sky. The aurora borealis is quite ordinary this evening. And then suddenly, something strange appears nearby. A thin streak of light. Bright, smooth, not green, but violet. It stretches across the entire sky, as if someone has drawn a glowing line from one horizon to the other. What is this, anyway? It doesn't resemble any familiar atmospheric phenomenon. People start taking pictures, posting them, discussing what they saw. It's gradually becoming clear. This is happening again. Not a camera glitch, not a random reflection. Something new is truly appearing in the sky. At first, the phenomenon was simply named as a joke, Steve. The name just stuck. And then, it became official. Then scientists got involved, and it quickly became clear. The mysterious purple streak is not at all the same as the ordinary Northern Lights, although outwardly there seems to be a connection. The mechanism is different. Processes are taking place inside Steve that had long been invisible. At high altitude, very fast streams of charged particles move there. The temperature can reach several thousand degrees. It sounds crazy, but the air at that altitude is so thin that this heat would feel completely different from how we understand heat here, near the surface. The more Steve was studied, the more curious everything became. It turned out that it had existed not just for the past couple of years or even a decade. It had always been there. People just either rarely saw it or didn't pay attention to it. And frankly, there is something amazing about this. The era of satellites, supercomputers, space telescopes. And suddenly we discover a new atmospheric phenomenon right overhead. A good reminder, the planet still knows how to surprise, and we still don't know as much about it as we like to think. Imagine a winter night. You're standing in the middle of a snow-covered field. The air is still. The snow crunches softly underfoot. Almost complete silence. And suddenly, a thin purple line appears above the horizon. It stretches across the entire sky. The light is soft, calm. No flashes, no rumble, almost motionless, as if someone had drawn a brush across the black canvas of the night with a single stroke. Perhaps it's in moments like these that you especially acutely feel how vast the world is, and how much remains unsolved. Sometimes a mystery isn't hidden somewhere far away. It simply hangs above us, and we stare past for a long time. And as the purple band slowly dissolves among the stars, we move on to another rare optical miracle, to a rainbow that can be seen at night, to a pale silvery arc that appears in the light of the full moon. In the next chapter, lunar rainbows. Chapter 7. Lunar rainbows. Now we'll get to one of the rarest and most beautiful phenomena on Earth. Everyone's probably seen a regular rainbow after rain, when the sun emerges from behind the clouds and there's still a mist of water in the air. But there's a rainbow that very few people get to see. It appears at night, under the moon. Imagine a huge waterfall, a quiet night, dark. Only the moonlight glides across the water. The streams tumble down, breaking into millions of tiny splashes, and at first it seems like there's nothing special here. But then, if you look closely at this cloud of water, an arc appears. Strange, almost transparent, a soft glow from the darkness. This is a lunar rainbow, one of the rarest natural phenomena on the planet. It works almost the same as a regular rainbow. Light passes through droplets of water and is broken into colors. Only the light source here is not the sun, but the moon. And moonlight is much weaker, so weak that the eye often simply can't pick out all the colors. That's why a lunar rainbow usually appears white or silvery, as if someone has delicately drawn an arc of cold light across the sky. Incidentally, photographs often show more colors than in real life. Cameras can gather light longer than our eyes, causing red, green, and blue hues to appear in photos. To a person on the spot, a rainbow often looks almost ghostly, as if it weren't light but fog, deciding for a second to become visible. To see something like this, many things have to come together. A bright full moon, a clear sky, tiny droplets of water in the air, and the perfect angle. That's why lunar rainbows are rare, although there are places where the chances are higher. For example, Victoria Falls in Africa, parts of North America where the humid air and moonlight occasionally come together just right. It's easy to imagine a traveler arriving at a waterfall late in the evening, expecting simply a beautiful nightscape, nothing more. And then they notice a faint glow among the spray. At first, they think they're imagining it. Then the arc becomes clearer, and at some point it dawns on him, it's a rainbow, a real one, at night. Perhaps that's why those who have seen it with their own eyes remember it for so long. A lunar rainbow seems almost impossible. We're too used to the idea that a rainbow means sun, day, bright light. But nature, as usual, goes and breaks this familiar pattern. Sometimes the most powerful things happen precisely when almost everyone is already asleep. When it's quieter, when the day finally lets go, and only the moon, water, and stars remain above the earth. And while this silvery arc slowly melts into the night fog, we move on. The next stop is the very heart of the ocean, where giant round holes hide amid the blue abyss, so big that they can even be seen from space. In the next chapter, Mysterious Blue Holes. Chapter 8. The Ocean's Blue Holes. Now it's a boundless tropical ocean. From above, the water seems almost unreal. The shallows glow turquoise. Coral reefs form intricate patterns. Sunlight filters through the clear water to the very bottom. And suddenly, amidst all this brightness, a strange spot. A perfectly dark circle, as if someone simply cut out a piece of the ocean. It's the blue hole, one of the most mysterious formations on Earth. The most famous is located off the coast of Belize, the Great Blue Hole. Its diameter is more than 300 meters. Its depth is over 100. From the air, it looks like a giant eye in the middle of the ocean, too perfect to immediately believe it's a work of nature. When the first pilots saw it from above, many thought it was something artificial. the remains of an ancient civilization, or a crater of unknown origin. But the real story is even more interesting. Thousands of years ago, the ocean level was noticeably lower. Where there is now seawater, there were once enormous limestone caves. Underground rivers flowed through them. Tunnels, halls, entire underground systems formed, sometimes truly gigantic ones. Then the Ice Age ended. The ice began to melt, and the ocean rose ever higher. And at some point, the ancient caves sank beneath the water. That's how blue holes appeared. Simply put, they are sunken worlds of the past, underwater windows to an era when the coastline was completely different. But the most intriguing part begins below. When divers descend into such a hole, the sensation is strange, as if they were falling not only into the depths, but also into time. At some levels, stalactites are visible, the very same stone growths that form in dry caves. They couldn't have formed underwater. And this is direct proof. There was once dry land here. Some researchers say that diving into a blue hole is like entering a lost underground kingdom. The light fades, the temperature changes, the water darkens, and all around, stone columns that are thousands of years old rise. Imagine yourself on the surface. The boat gently rocks, bright turquoise all around, and directly below you, a vast, dark abyss. Quiet, still, a little eerie, as if the ocean is hiding something here. And frankly, this feeling is not entirely deceiving. Blue holes are true time capsules. They offer a glimpse into the Earth's very distant past, into a world that long ago disappeared underwater. And as sunlight slowly sinks into the depths of this abyss, we will move on. The next story will take us to a place that looks like it was imagined by a science fiction artist, where, instead of trees, stone needles rise as tall as multi-story buildings. In the next chapter, the mysterious stone forest of Madagascar. Chapter 9. The Stone Forest of Madagascar. Now, our journey is to an island that truly feels like a world apart, Madagascar. People usually think of it for its lemurs, chameleons, and strange plants found nowhere else. But now we're interested in something else, perhaps even more astonishing. Imagine a forest, only instead of trees, there are stone blades, thousands of sharp rocks, gray, tall. They stretch upward like giant needles. Some are as tall as a multi-story building. Narrow passages, cracks, and gorges are hidden between them. This is Chingi de Bemaraha, although many call it simply the Stone Forest. And from the photo, it's immediately clear where this name comes from. From above, it truly does look like a huge petrified forest, only instead of tree trunks, there are limestone peaks. And then you can't help but think, how could something like this even exist? Yes, nature can do much more. It just took her millions of years. Once upon a time, there was an ancient sea here. The remains of marine organisms accumulated on the seabed, shells, corals, limestone deposits. Then all this turned into thick layers of limestone, and then the sea retreated. And so began the long, almost stubborn work of water and wind. Drop after drop, year after year. Rains dissolved the stone, created cracks and deepened fissures. And gradually, the ordinary stone surface became a labyrinth of jagged cliffs. There are areas that were completely inaccessible to humans for a long time. Between the peaks are gorges, tens of meters deep, sometimes so narrow that it's impossible to pass. Because of this, isolated zones have formed within the stone forest, like natural islands. Perhaps that's why so many rare animals have survived here. Some live only here. One can imagine a small lemur scurrying along the tops of these cliffs in the morning as calmly as we walk along a normal road. For it, this labyrinth is home. For humans, it's almost impenetrable. Singi makes a particularly strong impression at sunset. The sun sinks lower, shadows stretch between the cliffs, and the peaks begin to glow golden. And for a moment, it seems as if you're looking at the ruins of an ancient city. Not human, natural. Maybe that's why many say it feels like another planet. The landscape is so strange, almost improbable. But such places are a good reminder. The Earth can be inventive, even without architects, engineers, or blueprints. Only time, water, and stone. And as the last rays of light glide over the sharp limestone peaks, we move on. The next story will not be about silence and beauty at all. There is pure power. We will see a phenomenon that at first seems impossible. Wind and fire combine and transform into a gigantic rotating column of flame. In the next chapter, fire tornadoes. Chapter 10. Fire tornadoes. Imagine a hot summer day. A fire starts somewhere in the forest. At first, it's just a small patch of flame, but the fire quickly spreads. The air grows hotter, and powerful currents of scorching air rise above the ground. And at such moments, something truly terrifying sometimes happens. The flames begin to swirl. Slowly at first, almost imperceptibly. Then, with increasing speed, a veritable fiery whirlwind emerges above the fire. A column of flame, rising high into the air. From the outside, it looks like a fire tornado. Flames swirl, sparks fly upward, and the air literally roars with heat. It's a terrifying sight, and beautiful to be sure. It's no wonder that for centuries people have considered this to be something supernatural. Fire spirits, deities, and mysterious forces that control the elements have appeared in legends. And, frankly, it's not hard to understand. A fire tornado looks as if nature has suddenly decided to break its own rules, although the explanation is quite mundane. When hot air rises sharply and different wind currents converge around it, rotation can occur. The principle is roughly the same as in ordinary tornadoes, only inside the vortex there is not dust and air, but fire. Some fire tornadoes grow to several dozen meters, and sometimes even more. The most powerful cases have been observed during large forest fires. Sometimes, such a vortex carries burning branches far to the side, and then new fires flare up far from the main fire. But even if you know how it works, the feeling of strangeness remains. Imagine a plain at sunset. The sky is red, orange, and in the midst of it all, a rotating column of fire rises. It moves, changes shape, sometimes expanding, sometimes contracting, like a living creature, too alive. Perhaps at such moments, you especially clearly understand how powerful nature remains. Even now, with all our technology, satellites, computers, it still knows how to truly surprise. And as the fiery whirlwind slowly dissolves into the evening air, we move on. Next stop, a place where the mountains look as if someone painted them with a giant brush. Red, yellow, orange, purple. In the next chapter, the Rainbow Mountains of China await us. Chapter 11. Rainbow Mountains of China. Now, China, a place you look at and can't immediately believe such a thing exists. As if someone with an overly generous imagination dreamed up mountains and decided not to hold back. Imagine the landscape, wave after wave of hills receding into the distance. But instead of the usual gray, green, or brown slopes, there are streaks of color. Red, yellow, orange, pink, purple. Sometimes it all looks as if a giant brush was simply drawn across the entire ridge. This is Zhangye, Danxia. And yes, many say the same thing. The first impression is almost surreal, like a dream. Especially at dawn, when the sun is just touching the slopes. The colors flare up more intensely, the shadows elongate the relief, and the mountains suddenly look like enormous waves of colored stone. How did this even happen? The history here is very old. Once upon a time, in the place of these mountains there were ancient seas and vast plains. Then, Over millions of years, rocks accumulated here. Sandstone, minerals, sediments from different eras. Layer after layer. Each with its own composition, its own shade. Then the Earth's crust began to shift. The mountains slowly rose, and wind and rain gradually revealed these multicolored layers, and nature, unhurriedly, revealed its picture. The most interesting thing is this: each colored band is a separate piece of Earth's history. Some layers are tens of millions of years old, others even longer. It seems we are simply looking at beautiful mountains, but before us, in fact, is a vast archive of the past. Sometimes you wonder, what did the person who saw this place feel like all those centuries ago? Probably the same thing, a pure distrust of the eyes. Such landscapes don't always come together even in the imagination. After the rain, the colors become even deeper. The mountains seem to glow. The red stripes are brighter. The yellows are almost like gold. The purples even look a little unreal. It's no wonder that photographers come here from all over the world for a few minutes of morning light. Every sunrise is different here. The same mountains, but the picture is already new. And in places like these, you feel time especially keenly. We live for several decades. These hills were collected by the millions. Every line on the slope appeared long before man, and, most likely, will remain for a long time after us. And while the wind still calmly glides along the multicolored slopes, we will move on. The next story is about a completely different kind of place. There, a person can hear what is almost never heard in ordinary life: absolute silence. In the next chapter, The White Silence of Antarctica. Chapter 12, The Quietest Place on Earth. Now we're back in Antarctica, but this time it's not about glaciers or rare natural phenomena. It's about silence. A true, almost impossible silence. Imagine an icy continent, hundreds of kilometers around. No cities, no roads, no cars, no planes. None of the familiar hum of civilization. Just snow, ice, sky, and wind. It's usually thought of as silence, simply the absence of sound. But polar explorers describe it differently. They say true silence is almost palpable, especially on windless days when everything around freezes. And then suddenly, you begin to hear things that in ordinary life drown out the background. Your own breathing, your heartbeat, the rustle of your jacket, even the blood in your ears. Some explorers recalled that the first days in Antarctica seemed very strange to them, simply because the constant noise your brain had become accustomed to since childhood disappeared. The hum of the city, conversations, traffic, music, phones. Everything vanished. There's only white space to the horizon. Sometimes they say that such silence changes the very sense of time. The minutes drag on. Thoughts move more slowly. The world seems to slow down. Imagine an Antarctic winter night. Thousands of stars overhead. The air is crystal clear. The snow catches the faint moonlight. And all around, not a single sound. So quiet that it's hard to tell whether this is Earth or some distant icy planet. Perhaps that's why many explorers call Antarctica the most unusual place they've ever. Not because of the ice, but because of this silence, almost complete. And while the endless snowy plains sleep under the stars, we'll move on. The next story will take us underground, to a place where thousands of tiny creatures have transformed a cave into a veritable starry sky. In the next chapter, we'll explore the glowing caves of New Zealand. Chapter 13, Glowing Caves of New Zealand. Now we go far south, to the islands of New Zealand. There, among the green hills, forests, and mountains, one of the strangest and most beautiful places on the planet is hidden. Imagine, you go underground. At first, everything is quite ordinary. A cave like any other cave. Stone. Water dripping somewhere nearby. the echo of footsteps. The darkness becomes thicker with every turn. And at some point, you raise your head and just freeze. The ceiling of the cave glows with thousands of tiny blue lights, as if the night sky suddenly appeared above you. Constellations, the Milky Way, an endless scattering of stars. Only this is not space. This is deep underground. Before you are the famous Waitomo Caves, one of the most unusual places in New Zealand. People come here for years, again and again, to see it with their own eyes. And the most amazing thing is this: these lights are not minerals or a rare natural glow. These are living beings, tiny larvae of a special fungus gnat. They spend almost their entire lives attached to the cave ceiling. Each one produces a thin thread, something like a web, and glows with a soft blue light, luring prey. For small insects, this acts as a life-saving guide, like a light in the darkness. But fly closer, and that's it, the end. This is the strange beauty of Waitomo. What looks like a starry sky to humans is to other creatures an intricately designed hunting system. Nature has a knack for inventing things you wouldn't even think of. A boat ride along the underground river leaves a particularly powerful impression. Complete darkness, no lanterns, no conversation. The boat moves slowly through the water, only a soft splash is heard, and overhead, thousands of blue lights. They reflect in the water, and the space suddenly seems to lose its boundaries. For a few minutes, you completely forget you're inside a cave. It feels like you're floating among the stars. Some travelers later say it was there that they first experienced true underground silence. Not heavy, not frightening, quite the contrary, calm. Perhaps that's why Waitomo is so often called one of the most magical places on Earth, not because of anything supernatural. It's just that reality sometimes turns out to be more beautiful than any fiction. And we move on. The next stop is the complete opposite of this quiet cave. Desert. Fire. A huge crater that has been burning for many decades. A place known as Hell's Gate. Chapter 14. The Gates of Hell. Now another picture. An endless desert. A hot, dry day. The air seems to have frozen. The sand stretches to the horizon, and at first it seems as if there is nothing around at all. And then, a strange orange glow appears ahead. It gets brighter, even brighter. And soon, an almost surreal scene unfolds before you. In the middle of the desert, a huge, round pit, filled to the brim with fire. The flames burn day and night, without stopping, for years, for decades. This is the Darvaza crater in Turkmenistan. Around the world, it is known by a more sinister name, the Gates of Hell. The history of this place is not ancient, but quite recent. In the 1970s, geologists were working here, searching for natural gas deposits. During drilling, the ground beneath the equipment collapsed, forming a huge sinkhole. Gas began escaping from underground. To prevent it from spreading and creating a danger, they decided to set it on fire. The plan was simple. Everything would burn out in a few days. Well, maybe a couple of weeks. It didn't burn out. First, months passed, then years, then decades, and the crater kept burning and burning. Today, more than half a century has passed, and the fire still hasn't died down. At night, this place is especially eerie. There's complete darkness all around, stars overhead, the air gets cooler, and suddenly, in the midst of this calm, a huge, fiery funnel blazes. Flames rise, heat radiates from the crater walls, and the dull roar of burning gas can be heard. Beautiful? Yes. Unsettling? Also yes. Especially if you stand at the very edge and look down. At some point, it truly begins to seem as if a door into the depths of the earth has opened before you. Hence the name. And although the crater's origin has long been explained by science, That doesn't make the spectacle any less powerful. Sometimes nature and man, together, accidentally create something so strange that it looks more like a still from a science fiction film. But that's not the end. Next, Australia awaits us. A place where clouds hundreds of kilometers long float across the sky. Not just clouds, but almost airwaves. In the next chapter, Morning Clouds, Glory. Chapter 15, Morning Clouds, Glory. Now to Northern Australia, where one of the strangest atmospheric phenomena on Earth occurs every autumn. It's early morning. The sun hasn't risen yet. The air is still, the sky is just beginning to lighten, and at first everything seems normal, nothing special. And then a white line appears on the horizon. It grows, rises higher, comes closer, and in a minute it becomes clear. It's a cloud, but not at all the kind of cloud we're used to. A gigantic airwave is moving towards people. Long, sometimes up to 1,000 kilometers, several kilometers high. From the side, it looks like a huge white cylinder that seems to be rolling across the sky. These are morning clouds. Glory. A truly rare sight. They were seen long before meteorology existed. Locals have known about them for centuries, but, curiously, even now scientists are still trying to fully understand how exactly they work. The speed is especially striking. The cloud can move faster than a car on a city road, and yet not fall apart, maintaining its shape. It looks as if a gigantic wave suddenly rose in the sky and calmly floated above the earth. Glider pilots simply adore these clouds. Many fly here specifically from different countries. It's all because of the powerful updrafts that form ahead of the moving wave. They can gain altitude almost without an engine. Some pilots fly next to the cloud for hours, as if accompanying it. Where does this shape come from? It's all tied to a complex interplay of temperature, humidity, and air currents. To put it simply, the atmosphere sometimes behaves like the ocean. It has waves, too. Only here it's not water that moves, but air. And this is exactly the wave we see in morning's appearance. Glory. It's easy to imagine someone seeing this for the first time. You leave the house in the morning, look up and see a huge white wall approaching from afar. Honestly, a few hundred years ago, this could have been taken as a sign from above, or a harbinger of something big. And even now, morning's photographs the glories look almost unrealistic. The shape is too smooth, the movement is too strange. But that's probably the beauty of it. The atmosphere has a way of surprising even those who've studied it their whole lives. And we move on. The next stop is a place where it looks like someone actually spilled red paint along the seashore. Chapter 16. China's Red Beach. Imagine a vast coastline. The water slowly flows toward the shore. The wind stirs the plants. And suddenly, it becomes clear that everything around is red. Not the sand, not the rocks, not the water. The earth itself. So vibrant that at first it seems impossible. This is Red Beach in China's Liaoning province. Although the word beach here, frankly, is a little misleading. In fact, much of this place is covered in special plants called sueda. For most of the year, they look quite ordinary, but in the fall, they begin to change color. The green gradually fades and red takes its place. At first, in patches. Then, it becomes denser, more saturated. And at some point, the vast area turns into a veritable scarlet field, almost a sea. From above, the spectacle is especially powerful. Red expanses stretch to the horizon, narrow paths winding between them. Sometimes it seems as if this is not a landscape, but someone's enormous painting, laid out right on the ground. But behind all this beauty lies more than just a spectacular view. It is also a complex ecosystem. Marshes and coastal areas provide shelter for countless birds. Migratory flocks stop here every year. Some species travel thousands of kilometers and use this place as a temporary stopover, almost like a seasonal home. And there's something particularly captivating about this. What looks like a work of art is, in fact, a living, working part of nature. Imagine an autumn evening. The sun is setting, and the red plants become even more vibrant in the golden light. Birds fly overhead. The wind barely rustles the grass. And at such moments, you feel especially keenly. Nature's palette is much bolder than we usually think. We're accustomed to green forests, blue skies, and yellow deserts, but sometimes the earth suddenly takes over and paints entire landscapes in almost impossible colors. Let's move on. The next story is about the depths of the ocean, where most of the planet's volcanoes are hidden, where new islands are being born right now. In the next chapter, the world of underwater volcanoes. Chapter 17. Underwater volcanoes, the planet's hidden builders. Now, to a place where people almost never go, deep under the ocean. When you hear the word volcano, you usually think of mountains, lava, ash, and thunder. All of that, yes. But there's something more interesting. The bulk of Earth's volcanic activity doesn't even occur on land. It hides underwater. From above, the ocean may look calm. Waves, a horizon, silence. But somewhere below, at a depth of several kilometers, the Earth's crust is breaking and being reassembled. Magma rises, cools, and builds a new seabed. Essentially, underwater volcanoes are constantly reshaping the planet, and they've been doing this for hundreds of millions of years. Sometimes their work finally comes to light. Literally. This is how islands are formed. Sailors once could follow a familiar route, and then suddenly see land where there had once been only water. And this isn't just a fairy tale. After an eruption, a new piece of land can emerge in weeks or months. The most famous example is Surtsey, off the coast of Iceland. In 1963, fishermen noticed steam and smoke over the ocean. Then, a rock emerged from the water. Then another. Eruptions began, and a new island gradually emerged in the middle of the sea, a real one, with shores, hills, and its own history, almost from scratch. For scientists, this was a rare chance to see how the Earth is born. But the strangest and most beautiful thing is even deeper, where sunlight doesn't reach. Entire ecosystems thrive on the ocean floor around underwater volcanoes. Hot springs emerge from the depths, and temperatures near them can reach hundreds of degrees. It would seem that it's all over, a dead end. What kind of life is here? But it is. Giant worms, strange mollusks, rare bacteria, organisms that live where life was previously simply not supposed. When such communities were first discovered, it was a shock. It turned out that life is much more stubborn than we thought. Imagine a spacecraft slowly sinking several kilometers down. All around is pitch-black, dense darkness. The pressure is such that a human being would be crushed almost instantly. And suddenly, in the spotlights, towers of minerals, columns of hot water, and creatures that seem not from Earth appear. The appearance is almost alien. Perhaps that's why the ocean still seems so mysterious. We truly know more about the surface of the moon than we do about some parts of our own seafloor. And while underwater volcanoes continue to build new land in complete darkness, let's move on. Where there is no light at all, to a depth of more than 2 kilometers. In the next chapter, we'll explore the deepest caves on Earth. Chapter 18. The deepest caves on the planet. Now imagine mountains. Forest on the slopes, rocks, rivers, a seemingly ordinary landscape. And somewhere among all this is a small crack, a dark entrance in the rock. Nothing special at first glance, but it's there that a completely different world begins, a world that descends so deeply that it's hard to wrap your head around. The deepest known cave today is considered to be the Verevkina cave in Abkhazia. It's more than 2 kilometers deep. To put it in perspective, if you lowered Europe's tallest skyscraper down there, it still wouldn't reach the surface. Although it's not just about the numbers, it's about what's happening inside. The deeper you descend, the more everything around you changes. The light disappears, sounds become muffled, strange. The air becomes heavy with moisture. Enormous halls, waterfalls, lakes, and underground rivers appear. Some galleries are so huge that they could easily accommodate a city block. Sometimes explorers travel underground for hours, then for days, sometimes for weeks, just to reach the very bottom. And there, a completely different darkness begins. Not the nighttime darkness, not the kind you get at home when you simply turn off the lamp, but complete, such that after a while, the eye no longer knows whether the eyelids are open or closed. In such places, a person's sense of space floats, and time too. Researchers have reported that after a few days underground, they lost track of the day. Without dawn, without sunset, without the usual landmarks, only the cave remains, and the night, endless. But even there is life. Scientists find insects, microorganisms, creatures that have lived for millions of years in complete darkness. Some have no eyes, they are unnecessary. Evolution simply removes. Imagine an underground lake, black, smooth water, silence. Drops slowly fall from the ceiling, and the echo goes somewhere into the emptiness of the enormous hall. And at some point, a simple thought dawns. You are standing in a place where sunlight has never reached. This is probably what pulls people down, because deep caves, even now, remain one of the last true unknown zones on Earth. And then comes another strange story, about a phenomenon that sailors have observed for centuries, about a glowing ocean the size of an entire country, about the Sea of Milk. Chapter 19. Milky Seas, a mystery sailors have observed for centuries. Now imagine a night in the middle of the ocean. You can't see the shore. All you can hear is the water, a scattering of stars overhead, and darkness without end. The ship moves slowly, almost silently, through the calm sea, and suddenly something changes. The horizon begins to brighten. At first you might think it's moonlight, but there's no moon. Then it seems as if there's another ship ahead, although no, the light is too broad, too even, somehow different. A little time passes, and it becomes clear. The ocean itself is glowing. Not a couple of waves, not isolated spots, but a vast expanse all around, for kilometers in all directions. The water turns milky white, as if someone had turned the entire ocean into a giant glowing lake. Hence the name, the Sea of Milk. Sailors have been telling stories about it for centuries, long before satellites, laboratories, and all our modern certainties. Captains recorded strange observations in their logs. Passengers recalled nights when the ship seemed to move through a glowing fog. Some people even considered it something otherworldly. It's understandable. Imagine the deck of a wooden sailing ship 300 years ago. All around you is the ocean. No communication, no forecasts, no explanations. And suddenly the entire water begins to glow with a soft, white light. Honestly, you could believe anything. For a long time, scientists couldn't even properly confirm that such a phenomenon even existed. It was too rare. There were too few traces. Only stories, old records, eyewitness accounts. Then satellites appeared, and at some point they finally managed to film a real milky sea from space, a huge glowing spot in the Indian Ocean. The scale was incredible, tens of thousands of square kilometers. It was practically a sensation. It turned out the sailors weren't making it up. It was all real. Later, researchers realized that the cause was special luminous bacteria. When their numbers become incredibly large, they begin to glow collectively. Billions of microorganisms, all at once, and then entire sections of the ocean can glow. But even here, not everything is clear. It's still unclear why bacteria sometimes produce only small, glowing zones, while other times they transform almost an entire section of the sea into a huge lantern. So, milky seas remain one of the rarest and strangest sights one can ever see on Earth. And yes, the sight is probably unforgettable. Night. The ship slowly moves forward. Underfoot, instead of black water, there is a soft, silvery glow. The waves shimmer white. The horizon disappears. The sky merges with the ocean, and it's no longer clear where the stars end and the sea begins. Such things stay with a person for a long time, perhaps forever. Because in such moments, you feel especially keenly one simple thing. The Earth still knows how to surprise. Almost as much as it surprised sailors hundreds of years ago. And while somewhere in the Indian Ocean, rare milky seas still glow, we approach the final chapter of this journey. Chapter 20. The Planet We Do Not Yet Know. That night, we saw so many strange, beautiful, and almost unbelievable things. We walked along the shore of a glowing ocean. We watched the endless lightning flashes over Venezuela. We listened to the desert sing. We admired the icy colors of the Arctic. We peered into the ocean depths and the underworld. And all of this, to be honest, is just a small piece of what our planet holds. When you look at a map, it's easy to think that the Earth has long been explored inside and out. The continents are known. The oceans are charted. Satellites photograph the planet every day. It feels like we live in a world where everything is already understood. But this, of course, is not entirely true. In fact, the Earth is much more mysterious than it seems. Scientists are constantly discovering new animal species, finding unknown ecosystems, new caves, and exploring ocean depths where humans have never been before. Every year, discoveries are made that, not long ago, would have sounded like science fiction, and often in the most unexpected places, somewhere in the jungle, under the Antarctic ice, at the bottom of the ocean trenches, or even high in the atmosphere right above our heads. Perhaps one of nature's greatest strengths is its stubborn reluctance to reveal itself completely. We can study it for centuries, launch satellites, build stations, lower vehicles to great depths, and still, questions will remain unanswered. Maybe that's the main thing. If we imagine that one day humanity will know absolutely everything about the Earth, every mountain, every cave, every stretch of ocean, every natural phenomenon, the world would likely become a little duller. The sense of discovery would disappear. That very wonder that drives people forward in the first place. Curiosity has driven man to cross oceans, to ascend into the sky, to enter space, and he continues to search, to look, to test. Who knows, maybe right now, somewhere on Earth, a phenomenon is occurring that no one has ever seen. Maybe at this very moment, a new island is being born on the ocean floor. Or perhaps there's life deep beneath the ice that we don't yet understand. Or perhaps another secret lurks among the forests, mountains, or deserts. One that will one day revolutionize our understanding of the planet. It's a good thought, if you think about it. It reminds us, the world is still vast, still strange, still full of wonder. And so our night's journey comes to an end. Today we've been to places that are almost unimaginable. We've seen glowing seas and fiery vortices, ice flowers and multicolored mountains, peered into the depths of the ocean and underground. But that's not even the most important thing. The most important thing is that we've once again remembered that the Earth remains an amazingly beautiful, vibrant, and still unsolved place. While you were listening to this story, somewhere over Venezuela, lightning flashed again. Somewhere in the Arctic, fragile ice flowers were born on the ice. Somewhere in the ocean, billions of tiny organisms glowed. And all this is happening right now, on one planet, on ours. And now, time to rest. Let your thoughts slow down. Let this day quietly fade away. And if somewhere far away mysteries still linger, no problem. They can wait until tomorrow. Close your eyes, relax, and go meet a restful sleep. Good night.